Our heart is this incredible engine, right? It beats something like 100,000 times every single day. But just like any engine, it starts to wear down over time. And for decades, we've known that aging makes the heart weaker, but where that decline actually begins, well, that's been a total mystery. So let's dive into this really groundbreaking study that honestly reads like a cellular detective story, one that might have finally pinpointed ground zero for how our hearts age.
So this is the big question, the one scientists have been chasing for years. We can all see the effects, right? The heart doesn't pump as well, it gets stiffer. But is that problem spread out evenly across the entire heart? Or does it all start in one specific troubled neighborhood? Because finding that hotspot, well, that could literally change everything about how we fight age-related heart disease. And let's be clear, the stakes here couldn't be higher. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer on the entire planet, and aging is pretty much its partner in crime. So figuring out precisely how our heart tissue breaks down at this microscopic level, that's not just some academic exercise. It's an absolutely critical step in helping all of us live longer and much healthier lives. Okay, so if you're a scientist trying to find this aging hotspot, where do you even start? You can't just look at the heart from the outside. No, they knew they needed a revolutionary kind of map. They had to go inside and chart the identity and the exact location of every single cell, just to see how the whole community changes as it gets older. So they use this brilliant two-part technique that you can basically think of as a cellular GPS. First, as we see in step 1, they use something called single-nucleus RNA sequencing. This is super cool. It basically reads the genetic activity log inside each cell to figure out its exact job. Is it a muscle cell, a support cell, an immune cell? Then for step 2, they used another technology to pinpoint the exact physical location of every one of those cells. And finally, they just merged all that data together to create this one incredibly detailed map that showed them exactly who was where. And once they had this map, it revealed something absolutely fascinating. It turns out the heart isn't just one uniform blob of tissue. Not at all. It's actually organized into all these distinct neighborhoods, which scientists call cardiac niches. And each little neighborhood has its own unique mix of cells all working together, kind of like a tiny community with a very specific job to do. So now they're armed with this unbelievable map of the heart's neighborhoods. The next logical step, right? Compare a young heart to an old one. And what they found? Well, it was both really surprising and incredibly important. And this is where the first big clue dropped. They identified 11 of these distinct neighborhoods, but here's the shocker. When they compared the young and old hearts, the overall size and number of these neighborhoods didn't really change. The basic city plan of the heart was still intact. And that meant the problem wasn't some kind of total structural collapse. It was something much more sinister happening inside one of those neighborhoods. And bam, there it was, the big aha moment of the study. All the trouble, pretty much all of it, was concentrated in one specific neighborhood, the vascular niches. These are the little areas right around the heart's blood vessels. In young hearts, they're calm, they're healthy, but in the aged hearts, they had turned into these chaotic hotspots of inflammation and fibrosis, which is basically scarring. This was it. This was ground zero. So, we've found the troubled neighborhood. The detective's story now zooms in even closer to ask, okay, so who are the actual culprits causing all this chaos? And it turns out, the researchers identified a whole trio of troublemakers. First up, we've got senescent cells, but you've probably heard them called by their more famous name, zombie cells. And it's a perfect name. These are old cells that have stopped doing their job, but they just refuse to die. Instead, they just hang around, spewing out all these inflammatory signals that damage the healthy cells nearby. And guess where the study found them piling up? Yep, right in that vascular hotspot. Our second culprit is something called activated fibroblasts. Now, you can think of these guys as the heart's construction workers. Normally, they're great. They repair damage, but in this aging, inflamed neighborhood, they just go haywire. They go into overdrive, pumping out way too much scar tissue. And that is what fibrosis is. It's what causes that dangerous, unhealthy stiffening of the heart. And rounding out this troublesome trio is a specific kind of immune cell, pro-inflammatory macrophages. What the study found was that in older hearts, these cells just flood in from the bone marrow. They arrive on the scene and just start fanning the flames, creating this chronic, low-grade, and really damaging state of inflammation. And this shift is it's really dramatic. See, in a young, healthy heart, you've mostly got these helpful, resident macrophages. Think of them like the local police force, keeping things orderly. But in an aged heart, they get completely overwhelmed and outnumbered by these aggressive macrophages flooding in from the bone marrow. This outside force just makes everything worse, fueling that whole cycle of scarring and inflammation. So, okay, let's recap. The scientists found the location, they identified the culprits, and they figured out the mechanism. But, just knowing what the problem is, that's only half the battle. The crucial next question was, can we actually fix it? Can we calm this inflammatory hotspot down? So they decided to test a very targeted approach.
This is where they brought in a class of drugs called senolytics. And the best way to think about these is as a highly specialized cleanup crew. Their one and only job is to seek out and destroy those inflammatory zombie cells while leaving all the healthy cells completely alone. The theory was pretty simple. If you can get rid of the zombie cells, maybe the whole inflammatory mess just shuts down. And here's the amazing part. It worked. It actually worked. In the aged hearts, you had high levels of zombie cells and high levels of those nasty inflammatory macrophages. But after they gave them the senolytics, the number of zombie cells just plummeted. And what happened then? The number of harmful macrophages went way down too. This was the smoking gun. It showed a direct link. The zombie cells were the ones calling in the inflammatory cavalry. This is so much more than just one successful experiment. The implications here are just enormous. We're really talking about a fundamental shift in how we can approach the entire problem of cardiac aging. Because for the first time, we don't just have a vague problem, we have a specific target. Instead of just treating the whole heart with general drugs, we can now start thinking about therapies aimed squarely at this one perivascular neighborhood. It's the difference between locking down an entire city versus just dealing with the one block where the trouble is starting. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Here it is, straight from the researchers themselves. Their conclusion is crystal clear. That neighborhood around the blood vessels is the primary hotspot. It's where this inflammation-driven aging really gets its foothold in the heart. That single sentence right there, that's a massive leap forward. So in the end, this incredible research doesn't just give us answers. It actually gives us a brand new, much more hopeful question to ask. By going from this huge general problem to a tiny, specific, targetable location, this amazing cellular detective work has really opened up a whole new frontier. And just think, the answer to this question could one day help millions of us keep our hearts beating strong for many, many more decades to come.